Moving into a new home is supposed to be a fresh start. But for these three people, it was the beginning of a nightmare they never saw coming. I'm a structural engineer, so I tend to notice details most people miss. When my wife Jen and I found the split level in the older suburb, it was a steal. The seller was a relocation company, and the listing said minor wear and tear. The first oddity was the deadbolt on the master bedroom door. It was reversed, so it locked from the outside. Jen joked it was 4 timeouts, and we laughed it off. But that first night, I felt a draft from the closet. When I opened it, I found the back wall was a false panel made of plywood painted to match, and it was cold to the touch, like it was breathing in winter air. A few days in, I was installing shelves in the basement and found a plastic bin tucked behind the furnace. It was full of Polaroids, all of women in different rooms of our house, looking startled or asleep. Dates on the backs went back 7 years. My stomach dropped, but Jen said it was probably a creepy collector who lived here before, and we should just throw them out. We argued about calling the police, but she didn't want to start drama in our new neighborhood. Then, the next morning, my car wouldn't start. The battery was dead, and when I tried to call a tow, I realized our landline was cut and my cell had no service. A neighbor later told me the previous owner had planted trees that blocked the nearest tower. Jen was at work, and I was alone, 20 miles from town with no way out. That's when I heard the first footstep from above, slow and deliberate, like someone testing the floorboards. I froze in the basement. The footsteps crossed the living room directly overhead. I told myself it was the house settling, but the pattern was 2 even step, pause, step. I crept upstairs, and the sound stopped. The house was silent. I checked all the doors and windows. They were locked. Then, from the kitchen, I heard the distinct click of the deadbolt on the master bedroom door engaging. I ran to it. The door was locked from the outside, just like we'd seen. My heart hammered. I rationalized that maybe the mechanism was faulty and had slipped. Using a knife, I jimmied the lock open. The room was empty, but the false closet panel was ajar, and that cold draft was stronger. I pushed it shut. On our la terre, I was in the garage looking for tools when I saw fresh boot prints in the dust leading from the backyard gate to the house. They were too large to be mine or Jun's. I thought maybe a meter reader had come by, but the utility box was on the other side of the house. Then, as dusk fell, I heard the deadbolt click again. This time, from the hallway, I saw the master bedroom doorknob turn slowly, then stop. There was no one inside. I couldn't explain this anymore. My engineering mind kept searching for logic, but the evidence was piling up. The photos, the footsteps, the locks. I grabbed a crowbar from the garage and decided to wait in the living room, all lights on until Jen got home. I must have dozed off. I woke to the sound of 3 slow, metallic taps coming from the heating vent near the floor. Tap, tap, tap. It was a rhythm, repeated every few seconds, moving from the living room vent down the hallway toward the bedrooms. I followed the sound, crowbar in hand. It led to the master bedroom. The door was locked again. The tapping was now inside the room from that closet. I broke the door down with the crowbar. The room was dark, but the closet panel was wide open, revealing a narrow crawl space. The tapping had stopped. From the blackness inside, I saw a single, blinking red light, LED of a motion-activated camera. It was pointed at the bed. I didn't think. I smashed the camera with the crowbar, then crawled into the space. It led to a tunnel that ended at a hatch under the backyard shed. I kicked it open and ran to a neighbor's house, barefoot in the snow. The police found the tunnel system connecting our house to two others on the street. In the shed, they discovered a recording setup with hard drives full of footage not just from our house, but from previous ones. The dates on the files matched missing persons reports from the area over the past decade. The detective told me the modus operandi was always the same. The predator would buy a house, install hidden access points, sell it quickly, then use the tunnels to enter and monitor the new occupants, eventually abducting them. The previous owner of our house had been a quiet man who worked from home. No one suspected he was compiling a collection of victims. They never found him. Jen and I moved out within the week. The news report said the tunnel network was so extensive, it suggested he'd been doing this for years, always one step ahead. Sometimes, when I'm in a hotel room now, I check the vents. I look for any sign of a draft where there shouldn't be one. The police returned the Polaroids to me as evidence. I keep them in a box, unopened. The woman in the most recent photos, dated just before we moved in, has never been found. After the divorce, I needed a cheap place for me and my son, Leo. The apartment above the old butcher shop was all I could afford on the receptionist's salary. The landlord, Mr. Gable, lived downstairs and seemed kind. He offered to fix the squeaky floorboards himself. The first weird thing was the newspaper. Every morning, the local paper was delivered to our door, but it was always addressed to occupant, and the front page was from exactly 1 year ago that day. Leo thought it was a printing error, and Mr. Gable said he'd look into it, but I started noticing that the dates coincided with minor local crimes, a break-in, a vandalism that had happened on that same day the previous year. One night, I came home late from work to find Leo shaken. He said Mr. Gable had let himself in to check the pipes and had stood in the living room for 10 minutes without speaking, just staring at the wall. Leo said he finally left without a word. I confronted Mr. Gable the next day. He apologized, said he had a spacing out problem due to medication, and gave us a fruit basket. I wanted to believe him, but that weekend a blizzard hit and the town plows didn't service our street. Our car was snowed in and the phone lines went down. Leo and I were trapped. The first night of the storm, I heard whistling from the hallway outside our apartment, a tune I didn't recognize, slow and off-key. It stopped when I opened the door. The whistling came back the next night, always at the same time, 3 a.m. I'd peek through the peephole and see nothing. Leo insisted it was the wind, but it was too melodic. Then I found our trash can in the hallway had been emptied and neatly lined with a fresh bag. Even though pickup was days away, Mr. Gable had a key, so I figured he was just being helpful. But when I thanked him, he denied doing it. His expression was blank, like he didn't remember. A day later, I noticed all the knives in our kitchen drawer had been rearranged, sorted by size, smallest to largest. Leo swore he didn't do it. My skin crawled. I started sleeping with a chair under the doorknob. The final straw was when I woke up to use the bathroom and saw, through the frost on the window, Mr. Gable standing in the snowy backyard. He was perfectly still, facing our building, holding a hammer down at his side. He didn't move for an hour. I watched until my legs went numb. There was no reason for him to be out there in a blizzard. No project, no urgency, just standing. I woke Leo and told him we were leaving at first light. If you're finding these stories unsettling, please like and subscribe for more real accounts like this. At dawn, I bundled Leo up and we headed for the stairwell. As I opened our apartment door, Mr. Gable was there in the hallway. He wasn't wearing a coat, just his usual cardigan. He held the hammer loosely, not in a threat, but like a tool he'd forgotten he was holding. He didn't speak. He didn't look at us. He just stared at the wall opposite our door. His head tilted slightly. Then, slowly, he raised his free hand and pointed at the ceiling, his finger tracing an invisible line. Leo gasped. I grabbed my son's arm and we pushed past him, running down the stairs. Mr. Gable didn't turn or call after us. He just kept pointing. We trudged through the snow to the gas station down the road and called a cab. We stayed at a motel. A week later, I called the police to escort me back. For our things, the officer told me Mr. Gable had no criminal record, but other tenants had filed complaints about him entering units and standing silently. One previous tenant had left a note with the landlord company warning about his nocturnal inspections. The police found nothing illegal in his apartment, just thousands of old newspapers stacked chronologically, all with the same one-year-old dates. When questioned, Mr. Gable said he was maintaining the timeline. He was evaluated but deemed not a danger. The officers said they couldn't do anything unless he committed a crime. Leo and I never went back. I read online that a new family moved in above the butcher shop a month later. I still get newspapers delivered at my new place. I never opened them. I just checked the date to make sure it's today. Leo says he saw Mr. Gable in town once, walking the same route we used to take home. He was carrying a hammer, but he might have been going to fix something. Retiring to the lakeside cottage was my dream after my husband passed. It was a fixer-upper, but the price was right, and the quiet helped with the grief. The realtor mentioned the previous owner left suddenly, but I didn't think much of it. The first sign was the cold spot in the hallway. Not just drafty, a palpable chill that made your breath fog, even in summer. My dog, Buddy, would whine and skirt around it. I thought it was poor insulation and bought a space heater, but one afternoon, I clearly heard someone whisper my name, Eleanor, from that spot. I was alone. I told myself it was the wind through the cracks. I found a ledger in the attic detailing repairs from the 1980s. The last entry read, "Sealed the well in the north field." Voices stopped. I assumed it was metaphorical. Then a severe thunderstorm rolled in, and a tree fell across the only road out. The power went out, and my cell phone died. I was stranded with Buddy as my only company. That night, the cold spot expanded. I could feel it creeping into the living room, a wave of icy air that made the candles flicker. Buddy hid under the bed and refused to come out. I heard the whisper again, this time saying, "It's time." I rationalized it as stress and grief playing tricks. The next day, I investigated the north field. There was a concrete slab, newly poured compared to the old ledger date. It was cold to the touch, even in the sun. That evening, inside, the temperature in the kitchen dropped suddenly. The digital thermostat read 55 degrees, but the rest of the house was 70. I checked the windows. They were shut. Then I heard footsteps from the basement, slow, heavy steps, like a man in work boots. Buddy started barking frantically. I called out, "Hello?" The steps stopped. An hour later, from the bedroom, I heard a man's voice, clear as day, say, "Ellie, come here." That was my husband's nickname for me. He'd been dead 5 years. My heart seized. I told myself I was hallucinating from loneliness. But then the voice came again from the hallway cold spot. "The well is open." I grabbed my phone, which had charged a bit, and opened a voice recorder app. I stood at the edge of the cold spot, phone held out. The voice returned, calm and familiar. "Ellie, I'm waiting." It was his voice. Every inflection I recorded it. As I played it back, I heard it clearly on the speaker. Then, from the recording, another voice overlapped a woman's, whispering, Get out. I never spoke. Actually, that moment, the concrete slab in the north field, visible from the window, cracked audibly, a sharp sound like ice breaking. A mist rose from it. I didn't think. I grabbed Buddy, my purse, and ran to my car. I drove over the fallen tree branches, scraping the undercarriage, but I made it to the main road. I stayed in a hotel and called the County Historical Society. They told me the property had a history of auditory phenomena linked to an old well where 2 farmhands had died in the 1920s. The previous owner had commissioned a paranormal investigation. The report, which I later obtained, confirmed unexplained voice recordings and temperature drops. The investigators recommended sealing the well, which he did, but the phenomena continued. The local police had a file on the cottage due to multiple 911 calls from past residents reporting voices and cold spells. They never found evidence of trespassing. The Historical Society director said, "Some places just hold on to things." I sold the cottage as is, disclosing nothing. The new owner is a young couple from the city. I still have the recording on my phone. I've played it for a few close friends. They hear it too, my husband's voice, and that woman's warning. The audio analysis app shows no edits. Sometimes, when I'm in a quiet room, I feel a sudden chill and I have to check all the windows. If these stories made you look over your shoulder, share them with a friend and leave a comment below.